Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. Will be conducting our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Second Falcon 9 in the overnight hours. For those who are with us for the launch of the Starlink 9-11 mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base, welcome back. If this is your first launch with us in these past 24 hours, welcome in. Hope you're having a good start to the morning, or for folks down in Australia, hope you're having a good evening. Currently T-minus 58 minutes, 13 seconds and counting from the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket positioned at Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. On board are 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites heading up to low Earth orbit, heading to the sixth shell of the Starlink constellation. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast. Our Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane have this launch off. Our Adam is Starbase bound at the moment. Well, at this current moment, probably or hopefully asleep and getting rested for some busy work over at Starbase. But Starbase bound, nevertheless, as we're tracking the stacking that is coming up soon down in the area of Boca Chica Beach. Talk a little bit more about that later. But in the meantime, you can follow the fellas and find their photography work on their handles on X, formerly Twitter. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. While you're there, you can be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Facebook, as well as Threads for those who are not on X. We'll also be joined in tracking coverage this morning by our friends Chuck Briggs and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, as well as Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. It is a somewhat awkward hour in the morning for a lot of folks here in the United States. So appreciate you being up with us. If you're in another part of the world where time is a little more reasonable, appreciate you being with us, whatever part of the day it is for you. So for the 400 plus troopers who are with us at this part of the day, thanks for stopping by. You can help us out by hitting the like button. It allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. It's much appreciated. Also want to thank Aussie Space Girl for hopping on with us in a moderator capacity. Again, it is a non-ideal hour for a number of our mods, so appreciate you stepping in. Of course, powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube that makes these live launch opportunities possible. So thanks to folks like Sulfur for Lunch, Jean Marquis, Patty Chichil, Butterfly, Mel Roberts Harold, V. Clark, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, and of course the ability to watch our live launch liftoff moments here in 4K. Since our last launch, so we have some new channel members joining us. Want to welcome in Richard Tarpley, Perry King, and Heather Gully, all joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard to the three of you. Glad to have you with us. Also want to thank Damian Williams for a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Damian. saying awesome coverage as always. If you want to follow along with Damien and you have a comment or question about the mission, other happenings in space, or you just want to offer some support for what we do here at Spaceflight Now, you can also use the YouTube Super Chat feature, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the duration of the coverage here. Currently T-minus 53 minutes, 36 seconds and counting. The Brevard County Emergency Operations Center has activated in support of this mission. Of course, an exceedingly busy EOC, not only because they activate whenever there's a launch-related activity here at the Cape, but also because we live in Florida and there's always seems to be something brewing in the tropics. Got our eye on a system that is coming in towards the Gulf of Mexico, and depending on how the models bear out, could potentially be heading towards Florida sometime late next week. So, of course, be keeping a close eye on that and let you know its potential impacts to launch activities here in Florida. As we're looking toward the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, some of the milestones that we're looking ahead towards as SpaceX gets ready to start fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, assuming that it is in a good position to do so. SpaceX does have a window for this launch that extends out to 9:33 a.m. Eastern. That's as long as they have not begun fueling. If for whatever reason SpaceX finds itself unable to launch today because of non-ideal weather or a technical issue that may crop up, they do have a 24-hour backup opportunity with the window that opens up on Friday, November 15th, starting at 5:17 a.m. Eastern. But assuming all is good this morning, at around T-minus 38 minutes is when the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load. SpaceX does this poll electronically, so if they are in a good spot to do so, they can take a little bit earlier, but T-minus 38 minutes is the nominal time when that happens. If the go-ahead is given, fueling of the Falcon 9 rocket starts at T-minus 35 minutes. It's when they begin loading both RP1 or rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen starts flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. After that, T-minus 30 minutes, cryogenic helium is loaded onto the pressure vessels for the first stage. Helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same will be true on the second stage, about 4 or so minutes after that. T-minus 23 minutes, loading of second stage RP1 concludes, and at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds, the strong back chill down process begins. It's when they are thermally conditioning the feed lines at the strong back in preparation for second stage liquid oxygen loading. We see that manifest visually as the so-called big vent that comes about 20 minutes and 20 seconds before liftoff. T-minus 16 minutes is when the second stage LOX load begins. And at T-minus 7 minutes is when the engine chill down sequence gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps and helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. It starts with the clamp arms underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, the strong back, reclines about 1.5 degrees away from the rocket, and it stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to, of course, clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage LOX tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The final 60 seconds as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup. That's when the control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before liftoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 Merlin 1D engines are healthy and ignite, the flight computer will give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket. T0. It's coming up, currently set for 5:45 a.m. Eastern, 10:45 UTC, T-minus 48 minutes and 11 seconds. Currently T-minus 47 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. As we alluded to earlier, SpaceX has been busy not only here in Florida, not only out in California, but also down in southern Texas. Taking a live look now at the Starbase facilities there at Boca Chica Beach near Brownsville. You can see the super heavy booster, tail number B13, has made its way out to the launch pad now. This is in support of Flight 6, which is coming up no earlier than Monday, November 18th. A little bit hard to make out given the fact that the heat shield side is facing us and it's sort of in the shadow almost of the launch tower there, but you can see that the ship upper stage S31 is also positioned and getting ready to be stacked once the super heavy booster is raised upon the orbital launch mount. SpaceX changing things up a little bit as far as the timeline for this mission. They're going to be launching at 4 p.m. at the earliest instead of their pocket that they've been using for the last couple of launches, which is around 7 a.m. And that's because they want to have the ship upper stage splash down in the Indian Ocean under daylight conditions so they can get some good visual data from the splashdown as they're working towards further improving the heat shield as well as eventually getting the mechanics right so that they can perform a catch of the ship upper stage. Another change for this mission is that they will be performing or will attempt to perform an engine relight of one of the Raptor vacuum engines a little more than 37 minutes after liftoff. They had scheduled the Raptor relight demonstration during Flight 3, but then decided to wave it off. Of course, being able to relight the Raptor engine in space will be an important demonstration for SpaceX that will enable it to perform orbital missions. Of course, you want to be able to show that you can do multiple burns with your upper stage, not only to demonstrate that you can get to various orbits, but also to be able to perform a deorbit burn. Of course, we'll have various pieces of coverage materials that'll be coming out in the next few days as we ramp up towards the Flight 6 launch itself. We'll have our live launch coverage of that mission. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube if you're not already, and turn on notifications so that you get alerted for when we start our live stream for the Starship Flight 6 mission. Time here on the East Coast is currently 5:05 a.m. Eastern, 10:05 UTC. Reason I couch that in current time here locally and not based off of the T0 is typically around the 1 hour mark. We'll see a little bit of venting from the strongback. That's pretty standard operating these days, it seems. At this stage, though, we're just scrubbing back and looking at some video. We have not seen venting around the 1 hour mark or even going back to around the 2 hour mark, which might suggest that SpaceX may be targeting a new T0 launch time for this mission. At this juncture, SpaceX has not said anything as far as shifting the T0 on this Starlink flight. We will, of course, keep you updated as we learn more. If SpaceX were actually at T-minus 38 minutes, 10 seconds and counting, we'd be about 3-ish minutes away from fueling starting on the Falcon 9 rocket. We will, of course, keep an eye out for signs of fueling, which usually start to become evident around the T-minus 33-minute mark. A couple minutes of loading liquid oxygen on the Falcon 9's first stage is enough to give us a bit of a frost line near the base of the rocket. Taking a look at the live chat, I see one of our moderators, Mark Otto, is checking in at this juncture. Good to see you, Mark. Again, if you're just joining us, we're currently at 5:08 a.m. Eastern, 10:08 UTC. Just couching our timeline here based off real time as opposed to the T0 you see displayed in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, because we have not seen the typical little bit of venting that comes up around both 2 hours out from launch as well as about an hour from liftoff, which suggests that SpaceX may be targeting a new T0 for this mission. They have not officially issued a new T0 as of yet. Based off of their current published T0 of 5:45 a.m. Eastern, 10:45 UTC, they should be starting fueling in about 30 seconds. So, of course, we will stand by for signs of fueling and let you know if there may or may not be a shift in the T0. We just want to couch that based off of our experience covering Falcon 9 flights, what is typical to see in the lead up to an actual T0 versus what we have seen tonight or this morning. Local time currently 5:12 a.m. Eastern, 10:12 UTC. At this stage, we are not seeing any evidence that SpaceX is in fact fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. So, based off our estimation, they're holding the countdown, and so far as we can tell, have not set a new T0 as of yet. So we'll be adjusting our clock momentarily. There we go. Once a new T0 has been identified by SpaceX, we'll of course start the countdown clock up again, but at this point in time, we are not seeing any evidence that SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. Unclear if the decision to not pursue a liftoff at 5:45 a.m. is related to weather conditions or potentially a technical issue either on the ground system side or with the Falcon 9 itself. We're trying to see if we can get some more information on that and, of course, bring that to you as soon as we possibly can. It is a bit windy tonight, although not so much so that SpaceX would be unable to launch given the current wind conditions. Coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a 85% chance of favorable weather, citing possible weather constraints as the cumulus cloud rule and the thick cloud layers rule. Winds were forecast to be between about 15 to 20 miles per hour, and the booster recovery weather was charting between low to moderate on a scale of low, moderate, or high. As long as SpaceX has not begun fueling, they do have launch opportunities throughout the window this morning that last until 9:33 a.m. Eastern. Again, at this point, SpaceX has not announced a new T0 liftoff time for the Falcon 9 rocket, supporting the Starlink 6-68 mission. The reason why we have our hold graphic in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. As soon as a new T0 has been identified and made known, of course, we will restart that countdown clock. time now, 5:18 a.m. Eastern, 10:18 UTC. We are still in a holding pattern as SpaceX has not identified a new T0 for this launch. The reason we have our hold graphic up, if you're just joining us, is SpaceX is not fueling its Falcon 9 rocket right now, which means they are not targeting a T0 liftoff at 5:45 a.m. Eastern. Once a new T0 has been identified by SpaceX, we will, of course, update our countdown clock and resume the countdown once we actually know what they are targeting. Taking a look at our live chat, though, question from old fella Dave asking if we'll be covering or have you talked about a possible orbital launch from Bowen down in Australia by a private company called Gilmore Space before the end of the year. Actually, we do have an article up on our website right now, spaceflightnow.com, about that mission. The fact that they did get a launch license and are targeting ideally sometime before the end of the year for that mission. To the other point of old fella Dave's question, unfortunately, Gilmore Space has decided for this first launch, for at least this first launch, I'll say, they are not going to be providing any type of live video of it. So, since unfortunately we don't have our own cameras down in Australia and Gilmore Space is not providing any live capabilities to bring to you, unfortunately, we won't be able to cover that live as it's happening. But we will be tracking its progress, and certainly, with any first orbital launch venture, it is not an easy thing, and it would be quite the feat if they were able to have a fully successful first flight. We wish them luck in their venture and look forward to tracking the progress of that company. Angela Adler asking if the launch of this mission, Starlink 6-68, has scrubbed. No. Mission is currently in a holding pattern right now. SpaceX does have a launch window that extends out to 9:33 a.m. Eastern, so still plenty of time to pivot to a new T0. We have the hold symbol up and not scrub. If the mission were to scrub, we would change hold to scrub in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. SpaceX just has not identified a new launch time yet, but they do have plenty of time left with which to do so. And so as we learn more, we'll, of course, update you as we have information to pass along. Time is currently 5:33 a.m. Eastern, 10:33 UTC. May have heard a little bit of background audio. What's happening is they're continuing to do some testing on the mobile launcher inside the vehicle assembly building. So you may hear some periodic muffled announcement calls. If so, that's what that is. At this point, SpaceX still has not identified a new T0 liftoff time for their Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-68 mission. They did adjust the start time of their stream on X. However, it's unclear if that necessarily correlates with a new T0 or if they've just pushed that off far enough to the point where it wouldn't be inadvertently triggered when they are not actually ready to start the live stream. Again, we are awaiting a new T0, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, where our countdown clock normally is. The reason we don't have a clock is because we don't have a new announced time for when this Falcon 9 rocket is going to start flying. As soon as we have that information, we'll of course pass that along to you, as well as any additional reasoning for the shift in timeline here. Sunrise locally is set for around 6:44 a.m. Eastern this morning. So depending on when this rocket is ready to launch, if it is still ready to launch today, there may be a chance for that jellyfish effect that a lot of you are asking about in the live chat. Obviously, the longer it goes into the window, which lasts until 9:33 a.m. Eastern, the less likely it would be that we get that effect. But hope springs eternal. Taking a look at the live chat here. Question from a viewer asking if the towers around the rocket are there to take lightning strikes. Yes, those 4 towers from our vantage point to the left or the right of the Falcon 9 rocket, those are part of the lightning protection system for Space Launch Complex 40. Each pad has its own distinct lightning protection system. But yes, those are what those 4 towers are, with the white spires on top. time now 5:40 a.m. Eastern, and do have a potentially good update for you. We do have a new T0 for this mission. We're going to have to wait a little bit. As you can see, our clock is now moving. The new T0 is set for 7:53 a.m. Eastern. Again, backup opportunities last until 9:33 a.m. So if they do need to push back further in the window yet again, they do still have opportunities to do so. But as of right now, the current operating T0 is 7:53 a.m. Eastern. That's 12:53 UTC for those joining around the world. do have another update for all of you. SpaceX has once again adjusted the T0 time to now, as published, 8:21 a.m. Eastern. 8:21 a.m. Eastern. That is 13:21 UTC for those around the world. That means our new T0, or our countdown time is now T minus 2 hours, 32 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. Basically, head on over to your favorite streaming service, pick a nice long movie, and you can watch that in the time it'll take for the countdown to proceed to liftoff at this point. Maybe not a Scorsese film like The Irishman, but something that's solid 2.5 hours. Of course, with this update just coming down within the last couple of minutes here, SpaceX once again does have launch opportunities as advertised that last until 9:33 a.m. Eastern, so they do have the ability to make further adjustments as needed. And of course, we will pass along any updates to you as we learn them. Time's currently T minus 2 hours, 17 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. At this point, SpaceX, for now, seems to be holding to the current T0 as advertised, 8:21 a.m. Eastern, 13:21 UTC. Again, as long as they have not begun fueling, they do have backup opportunities for this launch that reportedly last until 9:33 a.m. Eastern. And if nothing pans out this morning, they do have a 24-hour backup opportunity that's coming up tomorrow, Friday, November 15th, starting at 5:17 a.m. Eastern. We will, of course, be standing by for any further updates from SpaceX and pass those along to you if there's anything of note that comes up in the next couple of hours here. Until we get down to about T-minus 1 hour, though, we'll be pulling back to a little bit lighter commentary, checking in with you periodically as we continue on through the count. Fortunately, as we wait, we're being treated to a very lovely sunrise here on Florida's Space Coast. The sun should be coming up pretty close to behind the pad here, maybe a little obscured by the clouds that are off in the distance. Sunrise set to come up at 6:44 a.m. Eastern, so just about 40 minutes from now. Now currently T minus 1 hour, 57 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. SpaceX at this point still targeting a T0 liftoff at 8:21 a.m. Eastern, 13:21 UTC. Sun's beginning to rise here. We're approaching sunrise on Florida's Space Coast. Some really nice color in the sky. Fortunately, we still have a rocket on the ground, but hopefully that will change in now just shy of 2 hours. As long as SpaceX has not begun fueling the Falcon 9 rocket, they do have launch opportunities that last until 9:33 a.m. Eastern, 14:33 UTC. And if none of those pan out, the backup window opens tomorrow at 5:17 a.m. Eastern. Time now currently T-minus 1 hour, 29 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. Did start to see a little bit of venting from the strong back, which may be an indication that SpaceX is ready to proceed towards a teaser liftoff of 8:21 a.m. Eastern, 13:21 UTC. Of course, we'll continue to track the progress of fueling once it begins. Still a ways off from this point. A little less than an hour from the start of fueling. On board this Falcon 9 rocket are 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites getting ready to head up to low Earth orbit. This is SpaceX's 76th dedicated Starlink mission scheduled for this year. As of the completion of the Starlink 9-11 mission in the overnight hours, SpaceX reached 7,300 Starlink satellites launched in total since it began. So far, just this year, SpaceX has sent up 1,652 Starlink satellites. Now T minus 1 hour, 23 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Taking a look at our live chat here, want to welcome in Zen, joining us with the channel membership at the pad leader level. Appreciate that, Zen. We're glad to have you with us. Also want to thank Donna Hayes for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. So to our newest 5 members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Donna in the live chat if you haven't already. We are now once again T-minus 1 hour and counting to the planned launch of Starlink 6-68 from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. For those who may just be joining us now for the first time on this broadcast, let's go ahead and re-rack and do a soft introduction. You're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. SpaceX is currently targeting a T0 liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket there on your screen, sitting at Space Launch Complex 40 or Slick 40. Getting ready to lift off to begin the journey of these 24 Starlink satellites on board at 8:21 a.m. Eastern. That's 13:21 UTC for those joining around the world. SpaceX was originally targeting 5:33 a.m. Eastern for the launch of this mission, but for reasons that SpaceX has not disclosed, they pushed back further into the launch window. Seem to be holding at a target now of 8:21. That T0 time has not changed, and we have seen a little bit of venting throughout the course of the last, I'd say 30 minutes off and on. Indicative that they may be in a position to move forward with a launch now at this point. Our photographers, Adam Bernstein, Michael Caine, have this morning off, but Adam is making his way down towards Starbase as we speak. To follow their photography, you can find them over on X, formerly Twitter. Adam is at ABurnNYC, Michael Caine at MD Caine Jr. You can follow Spaceflight Now while there, simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads as well as Facebook. We are joined in tracking assistance this morning by our friends Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, seeing their live view of the Falcon 9 rocket from this vantage point. Appreciate those who've been patiently waiting with us for the duration of this countdown process through the couple of pushbacks into the window. I want to thank our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube for supporting us here at Spaceflight Now, allowing us to do these live launch opportunities. Now T-minus 54 minutes, 37 seconds and counting. For those who were not with us back when we were first talking about the countdown for today's mission, let's go ahead and give folks that may be just joining in a brief refresh and a look ahead at the countdown timeline. Step through it a little more briskly since we did go over it earlier this morning, but just for folks wanting a refresh. Coming up at T-minus 38 minutes is when the SpaceX launch director will give their go-ahead for the start of prop load today. SpaceX runs its countdown from its Hangar X site here at the Kennedy Space Center. It's the facility where they refurbish their Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights, as is the case with the rocket preparing to fly today. We'll talk a little bit more about its launch history as we continue on through the count. T-minus 35 minutes is when propellant load will actually begin. They'll start with RP-1, or a rocket-grade kerosene, being loaded on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Liquid oxygen will be loaded on board the Falcon 9's first stage at this time as well. T-minus 30 minutes is when cryogenic helium starts being loaded onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Same is true on the second stage, about 4 or so minutes after that. T-minus 23 minutes is when the second stage RP-1 tank is full. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process begins. It's the process of conditioning the feed lines prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. We see that manifest as the so-called big vent at about T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. Locks on the second stage start flowing at about T-minus 16 minutes. 7 minutes before liftoff, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. That starts with the clamp arms opening up just underneath the payload fairings, and then the transporter erector, where the strong back reclines about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before launch, the first stage LOX tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute after that, at which point the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. Propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch at 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 for a T0 liftoff. Again, currently targeting 8:21 a.m. Eastern. And it's 13:21 UTC. With the completion of the launch this morning from Vandenberg, here's where SpaceX stands as far as its Falcon family of rockets. Having launched 111 so far between the Falcon 9 and the Falcon Heavy. 109 Falcon 9 rockets and 2 Falcon Heavies so far this year. Currently T-minus 48 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Taking a look at our live chat, I want to thank the more than 2,200 of you who are joining with us live at this hour. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us. Allows more folks to find their way into this live coverage now that it seems like SpaceX is in a position to move towards a launch in 48 minutes and 20 seconds. Also want to thank a couple folks for their generosity this morning. Thanks to Donna Hayes for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships, and to channel member Patty Chichil for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership as well. Appreciate that from the both of you. And to our newest 6 channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Donna and Patty in the live chat if you haven't already. We hope you stick around with channel membership. We'll touch on this briefly here and then come back to it as we get closer to liftoff. But let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to be flying once it leaves the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Take a look at a satellite view via Google Earth of Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Following the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-68 mission, vehicle will fly in a southeasterly trajectory following that green arc you see there on your screen. First stage booster will separate and is set to touch down on the drone ship. SpaceX has 3 of them in service, 2 of them here on the East Coast, and the one on deck today is just read the instructions. If successful, this will be the 97th booster landing for this particular drone ship and the 368th booster landing overall. The booster that's flying this mission B-1076 is going for its 18th flight today, having launched less than a month ago back on October 18th. We'll talk more about its booster history a little bit further into this countdown. SpaceX will also endeavor to recover the payload fairings on this mission. They splash down under the support of parachutes, as you can see in this image from a SpaceX presentation made earlier this year. They're brought aboard a recovery vessel and will be brought back into Port Canaveral, same as the booster, turned over for refurbishment and reuse on a future flight. SpaceX is working to certify both its boosters and its payload fairings for up to 40 flights apiece. Now T minus 42 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. We're just about 4-ish minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director needs to make the call on the start of prop load. SpaceX takes its pull electronically, so if it feels like it's in a good position to move forward, they can take that electronic pull a little bit early. Of course, fueling will then begin at T minus 35 minutes. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank one of our moderators, Mark Otto, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that generosity, Mark. And to our 10 newest channel members, welcome aboard to you. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Mark in the live chat if you haven't already, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. We're now T minus 37 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. SpaceX not only busy here in Florida, but as we mentioned earlier, they're busy down at Starbase in southern Texas. As you can see, they have now hoisted the Super Heavy booster B-13 up into the air. They're preparing to bring it over to the orbital launch mount and lower it as they begin the stacking process ahead of the planned Flight 6 mission coming up on Monday, November 18th. Our Adam Bernstein is Starbase bound as we speak, and and will be part of our team on the ground supporting our live launch coverage for this mission. This current live view from Starbase is brought to you by our friends over at La Padre. Sun just starting to rise there at Starbase, but you can see the outline of the flap of the ship upper stage sitting just in front of the launch tower from this camera's perspective. Of course, once the Super Heavy booster is on the orbital launch mount and is ready to go, then they'll turn their attention to stacking the ship upper stage. We're now T-minus 35 minutes, 29 seconds and counting. We'll continue to keep our eyes over on the happenings down in Starbase and let you know about any notable updates. Turning our attention back to the mission at hand, getting ready to launch in about 35 minutes. SpaceX is preparing to start fueling if they are in a good position to do so, if the launch director did give the go-ahead. Fueling starts right now with the loading of RP-1, or rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen is now flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. In the next couple of minutes, we should be able to see a little bit of vapor near the base of the first stage. It's a good visual indication that fueling is in fact underway, as we have not gotten word from SpaceX that fueling is imminent, or hopefully we will get word that fueling has begun from SpaceX, but we'll look for visual indications of that. Now T minus 31 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. It's very difficult to see given the backlighting of the rocket right now at the time of day, but if you look near the base of the rocket, you can definitively see some vapor near the base of the first stage. Good visual indication that super cold densified liquid oxygen is in fact flowing on board the booster of the Falcon 9 rocket. Obviously much colder than the warm, humid Florida air, and so as the tank gets filled, it creates a little bit of vapor along the skin of the rocket. That helps us know that LOX is actually flowing, which means SpaceX is committing to a launch attempt coming up at 6:21 a.m. Eastern, 13:21 UTC. Now T minus 28 minutes, 7 seconds and counting. One of the benefits of where these pads are situated is we are nestled among the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, which means from time to time we do get to spot some interesting creatures both on the land and the air, and in the case of this morning, in the water. If you look out across the Turn Basin, saw a couple of glimpses of them just a moment ago. Keep your eyes peeled because you've seen a couple of manatees that have been cruising around in the area this morning. As the weather starts to get colder, I know it's certainly not a cold morning right now, but we should start to see more manatee sightings as they look for warmer pockets of water. The Turn Basin is one of the spots where they do like to congregate from time to time. taking a quick peek back at Starbase, you can see SpaceX continuing to make progress on stacking the Starship rocket ahead of Flight 6 coming up on Monday. This view from our friends at Lab Padre. We'll be, of course, partnering with them once again for our live launch coverage of Starship Flight 6 when it's ready to go. Currently targeting a liftoff at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Now T-minus 25 minutes, 21 seconds and counting. SpaceX, at this point, has begun loading cryogenic helium on board the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's second stage. First stage booster that's supporting this mission, B-1076, is going for its 18th flight today. Before that happens, let's go ahead and take a step back and bring you back through its flight history before we go ahead and see it notch flight number 18. It first came on the scene back on November 26th of 2022 when it launched a Cargo Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station. This is part of SpaceX's Commercial Resupply Services 2, or CRS-2 contract. The mission in question, CRS number 26. That was followed by a launch for OneWeb and their internet constellation. This was Flight 16. SpaceX was originally contracted by OneWeb to launch a trio of batches of its satellite internet constellation after Russia invaded Ukraine, and OneWeb had to pivot away from the use of the Soyuz rocket. That mission was followed up by the launch of its first Starlink batch. This was Starlink 6-1 on February 27th. Followed up by the Intelsat 4E/Tempo mission. Tempo instrument was a hosted payload on behalf of NASA. Stands for Tropospheric Emissions Monitoring of Pollutions. It's a space-based spectrometer that monitors air pollution across North America. Following that flight, it was back to Starlink land for this booster. It's Starlink 6-3 on May 19th. Starlink 6-6 on July 24th, 6-14 on September 9th, 6-21 on October 5th. Then launched a pair of satellites on behalf of Luxembourg-based SES, the O3b mPOWER satellites numbers 5 and 6, lifting off on November 12th of 2023. Moving right along, it launched the Ovzon 3 satellite as its first mission of this year. Following that, we had Starlink 6-40, lifting off on February 29th. Eutelsat 36D was up next on March 30th. Then back to some Starlinks. We had Starlink 6-54 on April 28th, 6-64 on June 1st. And the launch of the Turksat 6A communications satellite on July 8th. Pair of Worldview satellites, numbers 3 and 4, on August 15th. And most recently, Starlink 8-19 on October 18th. Of course, flight number 18 coming up here in 21 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. Now T minus 20 minutes, 8 seconds and counting. You could see the so-called big vent now in full swing here at the pad. Good visual indication that fueling is continuing on track this morning. Now T minus 16 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. The big vent is now wrapped up and SpaceX is preparing to start second stage LOX load. Now T minus 15 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. SpaceX prepares to launch its latest batch of Starlink satellites. It's also continuing to make business deals for its internet service. In a press release that was published yesterday, the company, the Claris Networks Group, announced that it was moving into the service of Starlink internet on trains. It's going to be partnering with the rail provider called ScotRail, supported by the Scottish Futures Trust, to equip, I'll quote them here, Class 158 trains on Scotland's Far North Line with Starlink to address long-standing communication challenges in the Scottish Highlands. Beyond passenger services, Claris is deploying Starlink on measurement trains, enhancing trackside infrastructure, delivering precise real-time data for diagnostics and remote monitoring. This comprehensive approach supports safer and more efficient rail operations across the UK by providing reliable connectivity even in remote areas. Of course, part of the Starlink business model is to address connectivity issues in challenging places like this. So another point of pride, certainly, for SpaceX as they continue to expand their Starlink constellation and try to reach more customers in a variety of different venues. We're now T-minus 10 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. Turning our attention to the payload on board this particular Falcon flight. There are 24 Starlink V2 mini satellites, and this mission marks the 76th dedicated Starlink launch of 2024. Each of these satellites clocks in at about 1,760 pounds, or about 800 kilograms. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use Argon Hull thrusters for in-orbit maneuvers. They're built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, and they'll be deployed at 180 miles or 291 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. To offer a comparison between V2 Mini and its predecessor, the version 1.5 satellites. V2 Mini has 4 times the capacity. They introduced E-band for backhaul. They use an upgraded phased array antennas. They're about 2.6 times heavier than their predecessors. And as previously mentioned, they use argon Hall thrusters as opposed to the previously used krypton Hall thrusters. Thanks to the on-orbit imaging of black sky in partnership with AGEO, to have this image of what a V2 Mini Starlink satellite looks like in its on-orbit configuration. Here's an image of what the thrusters look like during testing. We're now T-minus 8 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. A little less than 2 minutes away from the start of the engine chill down sequence. Taking a look at our live chat here, I want to thank the now roughly 7,900 of you who are joining with us live. If you haven't already, it's certainly appreciated if you could hit that like button for us. It allows the YouTube algorithm to do its thing and brings more folks into our live launch coverage. I also want to thank one of our moderators, Clistia Lee, for A, joining us this morning, and B, for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that, Clistia. And to our 10 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. Be sure to thank Clistia in the live chat if you haven't already. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. We're now T-minus 5 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. SpaceX should be about a minute away from the start of the strong back retract sequence.
Strong back retract has started.
You just heard the call out that the strong back retract sequence has now begun. The clamp arms underneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector with the strong back will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. You can see in this pad view from SpaceX, clamp arms are opening up and the transporter erector moving away. Quick bit of housekeeping here. You notice our countdown clock slightly different than what you see from the SpaceX feed. Reason being, our countdown clock is in real time, and what's coming in from SpaceX is on a slight delay. So we'll be making our call-outs based off of the real-time clock up until the point at which we're relying on SpaceX's onboard cameras. Now T-minus 2 minutes, 53 seconds and counting. Standing by for a call for Stage 1 LOX load being complete.
Stage 1, LOX load complete.
Good call from SpaceX. Last bit of fueling left to do is the second stage LOX load. Fueling on the second stage should wrap up in about 12-ish seconds.
Stage 2, LOX load is complete.
Good call from SpaceX. At this point, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. The venting you're seeing here are the ground gas closeouts as they're purging the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines.
Ground gas closeouts.
We're now just about a minute before launch. Go ahead and keep our focus here on the rocket now. We'll come back to the live chat on the other side of liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Go for launch.
And with that go for launch, we are now 30 seconds away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-68 mission. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-68 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Falcon 9 now passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. We're coming up on a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, the ignition of the second stage booster, and then bearing separation.
Stage 2 engine chill.
The call you just heard there, thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine prior to its ignition. Coming up on MECO here in just a few seconds. Should have MECO.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 startup.
There go the payload fairings. Good separation. We're now 3 minutes and 40 seconds into flight. Coming up next will be the start of the first stage entry burn. That's coming up at T plus 6 minutes and 4 seconds. So far appears to be a nominal mission on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. Those puffs that you're seeing in between the hypersonic grid fins are the cold gas thrusters, Falcon 9's first stage. They help adjust the attitude of the vehicle or its positioning as it comes back through the atmosphere and angles itself towards the drone ship. Just read the instructions. This is a view up through the inner stage looking back up towards space. Now 6 minutes into flight, we're coming up on the first stage entry burn now in real time. Looking for that in just a few seconds on the SpaceX feed. Here you see the start of that entry burn. This burn lasting about 21 seconds in total.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
Now 7 minutes into flight. Coming up in less than a minute will be the start of the first stage landing burn.
Stage 1 transonic.
Falcon 9 first stage now traveling below the speed of sound. Getting ready to ignite a single Merlin engine. Begin that landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 2 terminal guidance. Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good landing of that booster, B-1076 for an 18th time.
Stage 2 shutdown.
And we heard the call for the engine shutdown, assuming it was entered into a nominal parking orbit. The Falcon 9's upper stage will coast until T plus 53 minutes, 57 seconds. There will be a brief 1-second burn. That'll be capped off by the deployment of the 24 Starlink satellites, T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 5 seconds. Before we go ahead back to our mission stats, do want to take one more look back over at Starbase, as we've been continuing to track the progress of this Super Heavy booster. Now it is positioned on the orbital launch mount. Again, SpaceX is working towards the launch of Starship Flight 6 coming up on Monday at 4 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Eastern. Adam Bernstein well on his way to Starbase as we speak, getting ready to help support our live launch coverage of this mission in conjunction with our friends over at Lab Padre. You can see Starship Upper Stage S-31 standing by, awaiting its turn to be stacked atop the Super Heavy booster. SpaceX will once again be attempting to catch that Super Heavy booster that you see there on your screen. This would just be the second time, if successful, that SpaceX catches a Super Heavy using the so-called Mechazilla launch tower's chopsticks. Those two support structures that are jutting out from the launch tower, helping to support the Super Heavy booster at the moment. We'll also have some content in the lead up to the launch of Starship Flight 6 right here on our YouTube channel. So if you're not already a subscriber, now's a good time to do so. And as we begin to wind down, let's go ahead and turn to our mission stats as they currently stand with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, B-1076. That marked its 18th flight so far. This is also SpaceX's 395th Falcon 9 launch to date, their 110th Falcon 9 launch of 2024, the 340th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. Excuse me. This is SpaceX's 112th orbital launch of 2024, including 2 Falcon Heavy missions. This is the 124th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 216th orbital launch from Pad 40, and the 271st overall orbital launch from this pad. With this mission in the rearview mirror, here's the bar chart version of those Falcon family stats. Moving on to some recovery updates. This was the 97th booster landing on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions. That marked the 289th SpaceX drone ship landing and the 368th overall SpaceX booster landing. Finally, with some industry stats, this marked the 79th orbital launch from Florida, the 119th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 130th orbital launch from U.S. rocket company, and the 213th orbital launch from around the globe. There have been 6 orbital failures on the year so far, so here's where the pie chart currently stands. The U.S. continues to hold 61% of the pie with its 130 missions. China, with 55, has 26. Russia, with 13, has 6% of the pie. You can see the breakdown of the rest of the countries represented. Japan, 6 launches on the year. India and Iran with 3 apiece. European Space Agency looking to launch its Vega C rocket on its return to flight mission that's coming up now next month, looking at a early December launch for that one. And North Korea with 1 launch attempt that ended in failure. And that is going to do it for us, folks, on a very strung out morning, given the launch delays. So we're going to go ahead and bring our live launch coverage to a close here. But before we do want to remind folks of some upcoming missions that we have on the docket. Looking forward to the launch of the Optus X payload that's coming up on a Falcon flight from Launch Complex 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. That's on November 17th. Then earlier in the day, ahead of the launch of Flight 6 of Starship, we have a launch for the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, the launch of the GSAT-N2, or GSAT-20 satellite. That's set to launch at 1:31 p.m. Eastern from the pad you see here on your screen, Slick 40. And then leading up to the big one, Starship Flight 6, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2200 UTC. Again, we'll have robust live coverage leading up to that launch, as well as on the day itself, in partnership with Lab Padre. So we hope to see you there, and for the missions happening along the way. I want to thank our wonderful moderators in the live chat who have been helping us out this morning. Thanks to Clistia Lee, Mark Otto, and Aussie Space Girl for hanging with us for this launch. I want to thank our wonderful channel member community for supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Big tip of the hat to our friends Pete Carsons with Max Ski Productions, Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for their help with tracking the rocket this morning. Our thanks, as always, to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who not only performing technical duties on the behind the scenes for this mission, but also stepping into tracking duties as well today, since Adam is, as we mentioned, on his way to Starbase as we speak. Most importantly, though, I want to thank you for wherever you're watching from with this launch. We hope you join us again in the very near future. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.